Hello, welcome to Gentle Wisdom Tales, where you find real-life stories that touch the heart.
The years of fighting. People thought divorces happened because love died. Taylor used to think that too, back when she was younger, back when she believed problems had clean beginnings and clean endings. But her divorce wasn't happening because love died. It was happening because everything else had died first. Trust, softness, laughter, the small daily kindnesses that made a marriage feel like home instead of work. And worst of all, hope. For years, their fights had been predictable. Money, silence, William's distance, Taylor's sharp tongue, the way he disappeared emotionally like he was slipping into a locked room only he could access. But underneath those fights lived something bigger, uglier, older, a name neither of them said often, like saying it would invite the pain back into the room. Michael, their son, gone at 21. Gone on a night that still echoed through their marriage like thunder that never finished rolling away. Taylor's anger had been a wildfire ever since. It burned everything. Holidays, anniversaries, Sunday mornings, even random Tuesdays when she'd see a young man laughing in a grocery store aisle and feel her throat close up. William grieved differently, quietly, privately, like a man trying not to drown. Taylor called it cowardice. William called it survival. And between those two words, they slowly became strangers who shared a house. Their daughter, Emma, had begged them to go to counseling. Taylor had gone twice. William had gone 4 times. Then they'd both stopped, each claiming the other didn't take it seriously. The truth was simpler. The counselor had asked the wrong question. Not do you love each other, but do you forgive each other? Taylor couldn't. William didn't know how. So they reached the day they were sitting in a law office, ready to sign away a life they'd spent decades building. Taylor's voice, when she finally spoke, was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was quiet and certain. Sign it, William. William didn't move. Taylor's eyes shone with something sharp. Don't you dare start acting sentimental now. Don't you dare. Not after all these years. I'm not being sentimental, he said. I'm being tired. Tired, she repeated, bitter. You've been tired since Michael died. William flinched like she'd slapped him. Henley shifted uncomfortably. If you'd like a moment. We're fine, Taylor said too fast. William looked at her then, really looked, and felt the familiar surge of grief. Not for the marriage exactly, but for the way they'd both been slowly destroyed, and called it normal. He picked up the pen, and then the phone call came. The call that shouldn't exist. William put the phone on speaker without thinking, because his hands were shaking too much to hold it close. Linda Carroway's voice filled the room, trembling with age and guilt. I don't have much time, she said, and I don't want to do this wrong, but you deserve the truth. Both of you do. Taylor's chair scraped the floor as she stood abruptly. Stop. Her voice was harsh. Stop right now. Who are you? Why are you calling? I was on shift the night your son was in ICU, Linda said, and the air seemed to leave Taylor's lungs. Taylor's mouth opened. She closed it. Her eyes darted toward William with accusation already forming, as if this was his fault too, somehow. William's voice was hoarse. How did you get this number? I looked, Linda admitted. I searched for you for years, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd tell me I ruined your lives. And maybe you'd be right. Henley looked alarmed now. Mr. Parker, do you want me to step out? No, William said. Taylor's fists clenched. Say what you need to say. Linda exhaled, and the sound carried years of weight. 33 years ago, Linda said, there was a consent form signed during a brief lucid window. The doctors needed it. The hospital lost it. Or rather, her voice broke. I misplaced it. I put it in the wrong file during a chaotic shift. And after that, it vanished into record storage. I convinced myself it didn't matter because you'd already made the decision. But I didn't realize how much you'd blame each other for it. Taylor's face hardened. What decision? Linda hesitated. The decision to discontinue life support and proceed with organ donation. Taylor's knees looked unsteady. She turned slowly toward William, her eyes widening, because this was the fight that never healed. This was the fight that turned their marriage into a battlefield. Taylor's voice came out strangled. You told me you made the decision because I couldn't. William's jaw clenched. That's what happened. Taylor's laugh was broken and sharp. No, what happened is you didn't ask me. You didn't give me a choice. You played God with our son while I was drugged and praying for a miracle. William's hands tightened around the pen until his knuckles whitened. Linda spoke again, soft but firm. Mrs. Parker, she said, I'm calling because you did have a choice. Taylor froze. Linda continued, you were lucid for about 12 minutes. You asked for a pen. You asked for your husband. You were crying, but you were clear. You signed the form. Taylor's breath hitched. No. Linda's voice broke again. You also wrote a note. A small note on the back of a visitor sticker because you didn't have paper. I kept it with the form by accident, and I found it 2 days ago in a box of old files I'm sorting before I move into assisted living. Taylor shook her head slowly like her body refused to accept reality. I don't remember, she whispered. William stared at her, eyes glossy. Taylor, she snapped toward him. Don't you dare say my name like that. Linda rushed on, like she feared losing the chance. I mailed copies, she said, to your home address. Certified. They should arrive today. But I also took photos. I can email them. Taylor's voice cracked. Read it. Silence. Then Linda, trembling, read the note Taylor had written decades ago. The note Taylor couldn't remember writing. William, if Michael can't come back to us, then let something of him stay in the world. Don't carry this alone. I trust you. I love you. Taylor's face collapsed, like someone had kicked out the supports holding her upright. William's eyes filled, and his voice came out like a wound. I didn't betray you, he whispered. Taylor's mouth trembled. Then why does it feel like you did? Because grief is a liar, William wanted to say. Because we were drowning, and we grabbed each other by the throat. But before he could speak, Linda added one more thing, an extra nail in the coffin of everything they thought they knew. There's another item, Linda said. It was in the file too. A sealed envelope addressed to you. It looks like it was written by your son. Taylor made a sound that wasn't words, just raw shock. William's voice went nearly silent. That's impossible. Linda's breath shook. I swear to you, it's real. The envelope in the mail. They left the law office without signing, not because they'd forgiven each other, not because they'd decided to try again. They left because their hands couldn't stop shaking, and their hearts couldn't handle ink. In the elevator down, Taylor stared straight ahead. William watched her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her face looked older than it had yesterday, like 33 years had caught up all at once. Outside, the cold air hit them. They walked to their cars without speaking, then stood there awkwardly in the parking lot. Are you going home? William asked. Taylor didn't look at him. Where else would I go? He nodded, swallowing. I'll follow you. I don't need you to follow me. I know, he said quietly, but I will anyway. She flinched, and for a moment her eyes flashed with the old anger. Then it faded into something else. Fear. They drove home like strangers driving to the scene of an accident. When they arrived, a white slip of paper was stuck to the front door. Certified mail notice. William's hands fumbled with the key. Taylor stood behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, as if holding herself together by force alone. Inside, the house smelled like stale coffee and winter air. William set his keys down too carefully. Taylor hovered in the hallway like she didn't trust the living room anymore. He looked at her. Do you want to open it together? Her eyes narrowed. What do you think? So he went to the post office pickup later that afternoon, with both of them sitting in the car, silent, as if words might trigger something irreversible. The clerk returned with a flat envelope. On the front, William Parker, Taylor Parker, 2 names on one line, like the universe still believed they belonged together. Back home, they sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd argued over bills, where Michael used to do homework, where Emma once colored pictures of dogs and princesses. William placed the envelope in the center. Taylor didn't reach for it. William didn't either. For a long time they just stared. Finally, Taylor whispered, "If this is some cruel mistake." "It's not," William said, though he didn't know how he could be sure. Taylor's voice sharpened. "You don't know that." William's eyes met hers, and something broke open in between them. "I don't," he admitted, "but I can't breathe unless we find out." Taylor reached forward with shaking fingers and tore the envelope open. Inside were photocopies of the consent form, her signature, clear as day, and the note, her handwriting, her words, her love. Taylor pressed a hand to her mouth. A sob escaped, sudden and animal, and she stood up too fast, pacing the kitchen like she was trying to outrun memory. "No," she kept whispering. "No, no, no." William's voice cracked. "Taylor, you wrote it." She turned on him, tears pouring now. "I don't remember." "I know," he said softly. "I know you don't." Her shoulders shook. "I remember waking up and hearing he was gone. I remember you standing there, telling me it was over. I remember hating you. I remember." She strangled on her words. "I remember thinking you stole my chance to say goodbye." William's eyes filled. "I thought I saved you from the worst choice a mother could make." Taylor laughed through tears, bitter and broken. "And you never thought maybe I wanted the choice." William stood slowly, hands open. "I didn't know how to survive that day. I didn't know how to survive you." Taylor slapped the papers down on the table. "So I've been punishing you for something she choked, shaking her head. For something I actually did too. William's voice was barely there. We both did. Taylor sank into the chair like her legs gave out, and then she saw the second envelope inside. Aged, yellowed, its edges softened by time. The handwriting on the front wasn't Linda's. It wasn't hospital print. It was youthful, slanted, familiar. Mom and Dad. Taylor made a sound like she'd been stabbed. William's hands hovered over the envelope but didn't touch it, like touching it might erase it. Taylor whispered, "Open it." William's fingers trembled as he carefully slid a nail under the seal. The flap lifted with a soft tear. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. William unfolded it, and his world went quiet. Michael's words. William read silently at first, his lips moving without sound. Taylor watched his face change. Shock, disbelief, grief so sharp it looked like pain. "Read it," she demanded, voice trembling. "Read it out loud." William swallowed hard. Then he began. "Mom, Dad, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it." Taylor's hand flew to her mouth. William's voice shook as he continued. "I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe because I've been thinking lately about how time can change everything in 1 second." Taylor's eyes squeezed shut as tears spilled. William kept reading, forced by the words themselves. "I want you to know I love you both. I want you to know you did your best. And I want you to promise me something. Don't turn my absence into a weapon." Taylor let out a broken sound, shaking her head. William's voice cracked. "I know you'll want someone to blame. I know that's what people do. But it wasn't anyone's fault. Not really. The world is just fragile." He paused, wiping his face with his sleeve like a man who'd forgotten how to be dignified. Taylor's voice came out desperate. "Keep going." William read it again. "Dad, you always think you have to carry things alone. You don't. Mom, you always love so hard it hurts. Please don't let it turn into hate." Taylor pressed her forehead to the table, shoulders shaking. William continued. "I want you to keep living. I want you to keep laughing. I want you to hold each other, even if it feels impossible." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And if you ever find yourselves sitting in a room deciding what to do with your marriage, please don't let me be the reason you let go. Let me be the reason you try again. Michael." Silence fell like snow. Taylor sobbed openly now, no longer controlled, no longer careful. All the years of holding it in came undone in one flood. William stood frozen with the letter in his hands, like it was both a miracle and a curse. Taylor finally lifted her head, her eyes red, her face raw. "I didn't know," she whispered. William's voice was ragged. "Neither did I." Taylor looked at the consent form again, at her own signature, at her own words. She shook her head slowly. "So I wrote that I trusted you, and then I spent 33 years treating you like you murdered my trust." William flinched, but didn't deny it. Taylor's voice shattered. "How could I forget that?" William's eyes closed. Trauma, medication, shock. The brain does what it can to survive. Taylor stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time in decades. He looked older than she remembered. Not physically, spiritually, like he'd been carrying a boulder that had finally cracked his spine. "I've hated you," she whispered. William's voice came out small. "I know, and you let me," she said. Accusation and heartbreak mixed together. "You let me hate you." William's eyes filled again. "Because I hated myself too." Taylor's breath shook. "Why didn't you show me this? Why didn't you fight harder?" William's voice rose, not angry, but desperate. "I did fight." He slammed his hand softly on the table, not to threaten, but to prove he existed. "I begged you to talk to me. I asked you to go to counseling. I tried to tell you that day wasn't simple." Taylor's eyes flashed. "You never told me I signed." "I didn't know," William shouted, then stopped, shocked at his own volume. His voice dropped again. "I swear, Taylor, they told me you weren't lucid. They told me you didn't understand. I thought I made the decision alone. That's what I've lived with." Taylor stared, stunned. "So we were both wrong," she whispered. William nodded, tears running freely now. "We were both drowning." Taylor looked at the divorce papers still sitting in her purse, like a weapon she'd brought to a fight she thought she understood. Her voice turned hollow. "So what now?" William didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, he didn't know whether truth healed anything, or just hurt in a new way. Then, from the living room, the phone rang. They both jumped. William glanced at the caller ID. MMA. Taylor wiped her face quickly, as if she could hide grief from a daughter who'd grown up inside it. William answered. "Hey." Emma's voice was cautious. "How did it go?" Taylor and William looked at each other. William's throat tightened. "Emma, something happened." "What?" Emma asked, sudden fear. Taylor reached for the phone with trembling hands. It's complicated." Emma's voice sharpened. "Are you both okay?" Taylor's eyes dropped to Michael's letter. "No," she whispered, "but maybe we finally will be." Emma comes home. Emma arrived that night, driving from 2 towns over with her husband Marcus and their teenage son Noah. When Emma stepped into the kitchen and saw her parents' faces, she froze. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What happened?" Taylor held up the aged letter with shaking fingers. "We found something." Emma's eyes widened as she recognized the handwriting on the front. "Mom and Dad."
Her hand flew to her mouth. Is that? William nodded, unable to speak. Emma sat down hard in the chair. How? Taylor explained in fragments. An old nurse, a lost file, a consent form, a note. Emma's face shifted from disbelief to shock to something like anger. Wait, she said. You mean, Mom, you signed? You wrote that note, and you don't remember? Taylor's eyes filled again. No. Emma looked between them. So all those years, William's voice was quiet. All those years, we fought over something we didn't even fully understand. Noah stood in the doorway, awkward and uncomfortable, sensing the heaviness, but too young to know what to do with it. Marcus placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. Go watch TV, buddy. Noah hesitated. Are Grandma and Grandpa okay? Emma forced a shaky smile. They will be. Noah left, and the adults sat in the kitchen like people gathered after a storm to count what was lost. Emma swallowed hard. Read it. Taylor's voice trembled. William already did. Emma's eyes glistened. Read it again. So William read Michael's letter out loud. Emma cried silently through most of it. Taylor cried without restraint. When William finished, the room held a silence, so deep it felt sacred. Emma's voice broke. He was so young. Taylor whispered. He was still my baby. Emma wiped her face, then looked at her parents with something raw in her expression. I grew up watching you two punish each other, she said quietly. I didn't understand it as a kid. I just thought marriage was sharp, like love always came with pain. Taylor winced like the word struck her. Emma continued, voice trembling. I learned how to brace myself in my own relationships, because I assumed that's what love demanded. William's eyes closed. Emma's voice hardened slightly. So what are you going to do now? Taylor stared at the table, at the papers, at the past. William's voice was quiet. I don't know. Emma leaned forward. You do know. You're just scared. Taylor finally looked up. We were going to sign the divorce papers today. Emma inhaled sharply. And now? Taylor's mouth trembled. Now I don't know what's real anymore. William stared at Taylor, his voice careful. The fighting was real. Taylor flinched. The loneliness was real. William added. The things we said were real. Taylor's eyes filled again. I know. Emma's voice softened. But you're both here. And she nodded toward Michael's letter. He's still in this. Taylor pressed the letter to her chest like it could keep her breathing. William looked at Taylor. I don't want to live the rest of my life as your enemy. Taylor's voice shook. I don't know if I know how to be anything else. Emma stood, tears running again. Then learn, before it's too late. The worst day gets worse. The next morning, the divorce hearing was scheduled for 11 a.m. They could still go, still sign, still finalize the legal end of their marriage. Taylor woke up early, sitting at the edge of the bed in the guest room, where she'd been sleeping for months. William sat in the kitchen, staring at Michael's letter again, reading it like a man trying to memorize oxygen. At 9:30, Taylor walked into the kitchen. William looked up, startled at the sound of her footsteps. For a second he expected anger. Instead, Taylor looked exhausted. I dreamed about him, she said quietly. William swallowed. Me too. Taylor's eyes dropped. In my dream, he was older than he ever got to be. He had gray in his hair. He hugged me and said, Mom, stop holding your breath. William's eyes filled. God. Taylor sat down slowly. I don't know what to do. William's voice was careful. We can still sign. Taylor nodded slightly, as if acknowledging a fact she hated. William continued, voice raw. But before we do, I need you to know something. Taylor's eyes narrowed. What? William's throat tightened. There were nights I sat in my truck outside the house because I couldn't come inside. Not because I didn't love you, but because I couldn't survive the way you looked at me. Taylor's face crumpled. William's voice broke. You looked at me like I killed him, and after a while I started believing you. Taylor's breath hitched. William. He shook his head. Let me finish. Taylor went still. William stared at the table, fingers tracing the grain like it could keep him grounded. I wanted to die, he said quietly. For a long time. After Michael. After you started hating me. I wanted to disappear, and make it easier for everyone. Taylor's face drained. Don't say that. It's true, William said, voice shaking. And the only reason I didn't is because Emma needed a father. And because some part of me still hoped you'd come back to me. Taylor's tears fell silently now. Steady. I'm sorry, she whispered. William looked up at her. I don't want apologies. He swallowed hard. I want to know if you ever loved me the way you loved him. Taylor's sob broke free. Of course I did. William's voice was broken. Then why did you treat me like I was disposable? Taylor shook her head, crying. Because I couldn't punish the universe. I couldn't punish God. I couldn't punish the drunk driver who hit him. I couldn't punish the randomness of life. So I punished the person closest to me. William stared at her, tears in his eyes. Taylor's voice turned into a whisper. And because if I made you the villain, then I didn't have to face that it was just tragedy. No meaning, no fairness. William nodded slowly. I understand. Taylor wiped her face, breathing hard. So what do we do at 11? William looked toward the window, where the winter light looked like it couldn't decide whether to brighten or fade. I don't know, he admitted. But I don't want today to be another day we make a decision out of pain. Taylor's mouth trembled. I already made so many decisions out of pain. William nodded. Me too. Taylor reached into her purse and pulled out the divorce papers, placing them on the table like a final test. Her hand hovered over the signature line. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "This was supposed to be the worst day." William's eyes met hers. Maybe it still is. Taylor swallowed hard. Or maybe the worst day was 33 years ago, and we've just been living inside it ever since. Silence. Heavy. Meaningful. William reached across the table, not touching her yet, just close enough that she could pull away if she wanted. His voice was barely a breath. "Do you want to sign?" Taylor stared at the line, then at Michael's letter beside it. Her lips shook. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I know I don't want to hate you anymore." William's eyes filled. That's a start. The decision. At 10:45 a.m., they sat in the car outside the courthouse. Taylor held the divorce papers in her lap. William held Michael's letter. 2 documents. 2 realities. Taylor's voice was tight. "We can't undo the years." William nodded. "No." Taylor stared at the courthouse doors. "But we can decide what the rest looks like." William's jaw tightened. "Taylor, if you want the divorce, I'll sign. I won't fight you." Taylor glanced at him. "Why?" William's eyes were steady. "Because I don't want you to stay out of guilt. I want you to stay out of choice." Taylor swallowed. She looked away, staring at the people walking in and out, strangers with their own griefs, their own endings. Then she said something William didn't expect. "I don't want to divorce you," she whispered. William's breath caught. Taylor's eyes filled. "But I don't know how to be married to you the way we used to be. I don't know if that version of us exists." William's voice was rough. "Maybe it doesn't." Taylor nodded, tears falling. "And maybe that's okay." William turned toward her. "What are you saying?" Taylor wiped her face, angry at the tears. "I'm saying we don't have to pretend we can go back. But we also don't have to keep walking forward like enemies." William stared, heart pounding. Taylor continued, voice trembling. "I want a new chapter. I want honesty. I want grief without blame. I want to sit in a room with you and talk about him without feeling like my lungs are full of glass." William's eyes shone. "Me too." Taylor's mouth trembled. "But I'm scared." William nodded slowly. "So am I." Taylor stared at the divorce papers again. Then with shaking hands she opened them, flipped to the last page. She held the pen. William watched, unable to breathe. Taylor whispered, "If we sign, it's final." William's voice was quiet. "Not necessarily. People divorce and still choose each other in other ways." Taylor laughed weakly through tears. "That sounds like something a therapist would say." William's lips twitched, an expression so close to a smile it hurt. Taylor looked at him. "Do you want to be free of me?" William's eyes filled instantly. "No." Taylor's voice cracked. "Then why are we here?" William swallowed hard. "Because we thought this was the only way to stop hurting." Taylor nodded, staring down. Then she surprised him again. "I think we should sign," she said. William froze. "What?" Taylor's tears fell faster now. "Not because I don't love you, but because I don't want our love to keep being poisoned by the version of marriage we turned it into. I want a reset." William stared, pain and confusion twisting. Taylor grabbed his hand suddenly, gripping tight. "Listen to me. I'm not leaving you. I'm choosing you without the poison." William's throat tightened. "Taylor." She squeezed his hand harder. "I want to learn how to be with you again, but I need to stop associating you with the worst day of my life." William's voice broke. "And divorce does that." Taylor shook her head. "No, but maybe choosing each other again, intentionally does." William stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Taylor whispered, "I want to date you." William blinked, stunned. Taylor laughed through sobs. "God, that sounds ridiculous at our age." William's face crumpled, and he let out a laugh that turned into a sob. Taylor pressed her forehead to his hand. "I want to start over, not erase the past. Just stop living inside it." William swallowed, tears running freely. "Okay." Taylor lifted the pen again. William's voice was raw. "If you sign, you're sure?" Taylor nodded. "Yes." William's heart broke in a new way, but then Taylor added, voice trembling, "And after we sign, I want you to take me to Michael." William's breath caught. "To the cemetery." Taylor nodded. "I want to read his letter to him, out loud. I want to tell him we hurt him." William stared at her, grief and love twisting together. Then he whispered, "Okay." So they walked into the courthouse. They signed, both of them, ink on paper. A marriage ended by law. On the same day the truth finally showed itself. And as they left the building, Taylor clutched the pen like it had carved her open. "This is the worst day," she whispered. William's voice was quiet. "Maybe the worst day is the one where you finally stop lying to yourself." Taylor looked at him, eyes red. "That's not comforting." William nodded, voice breaking. "I know." Then he offered his hand. Not as a husband claiming a wife, but as a man asking a woman, "Come with me." Taylor stared at his hand for a long moment. Then she took it.
Don't forget to click the like and don't miss the end and details of the emotional story.
At Michael's grave. The cemetery was quiet, winter bare. Taylor stood before the headstone, like she'd done 100 times, except this time, William stood beside her, not behind her, not at a distance, not like a man waiting to be punished. Taylor held Michael's letter in both hands. Her voice shook. I haven't read this to you yet, baby. William's eyes filled. Taylor inhaled, then read. Her voice broke halfway through, and she had to stop. William whispered, "Take your time." Taylor looked at him, and for the first time in years, she didn't see an enemy. She saw a man who had buried his son and then buried himself. Taylor continued reading, forcing the words out. When she reached the end, "Let me be the reason you try again," she covered her mouth and sobbed. William's shoulders shook quietly beside her. Taylor finally spoke, voice raw. "We didn't do it right, Michael. We didn't try again. We tried to survive and we hurt each other instead." William stared at the headstone, voice cracking. "I'm sorry, son." Taylor wiped her face, then knelt slowly, pressing her hand to the cold stone. "But we heard you," she whispered. "We finally heard you." William crouched beside her. For a long time they stayed there, two aging parents in winter silence, letting the grief exist without throwing it at each other like a weapon. Taylor finally whispered, "I spent years believing I was right." William nodded. "Me too." Taylor looked at him. "And the truth is, neither of us was right. We were just broken." William's voice was soft and scared. Taylor nodded, tears falling, and lonely. William swallowed hard. "I don't want to be lonely anymore." Taylor's breath shook. "Neither do I." She reached out and took his hand, and this time it wasn't a courtroom handhold or a performance. It was a choice, a deliberate one. And in that moment, something loosened inside Taylor's chest, like she'd been holding her breath for 33 years, and finally allowed herself to exhale. The new kind of beginning. They didn't go home right away. They went to a diner, a simple one, the kind with warm coffee and worn booths. Taylor stared at the menu like she hadn't been in a diner in years. William watched her with a strange tenderness. "You want pancakes?" he asked. Taylor laughed weakly. "Is that your idea of romance?" William's lips twitched. "At our age, pancakes are romance." Taylor's laugh turned into a sob, surprising her. William reached across the table and touched her hand carefully. Taylor didn't pull away. She whispered, "I don't know how to do this." William's eyes were kind. "Neither do I." Taylor stared at him. "I feel like I wasted my life hating you." William swallowed. "You didn't waste your life." Taylor's voice turned sharp with grief. "Yes, I did." William shook his head slowly. "You raised Emma. You loved Michael. You kept moving even when it hurt. You did the only thing you knew how to do." Taylor's eyes filled. "And you?" William's voice was quiet. "I kept breathing. Some days that was all I had." Taylor nodded slowly, absorbing him. Then she whispered, "I want to know you again." William's throat tightened. "I want that too." Taylor's voice trembled. "But we can't pretend nothing happened." William nodded. "We won't." Taylor took a shaky breath. "We need help." William's eyes met hers. "Therapy?" Taylor flinched at the word like it tasted bitter. Then she nodded. "Yes." William exhaled, relieved and terrified. "Okay." Taylor stared down at her coffee. Then she whispered the hardest thing she'd said in decades. "I forgive you." William's face crumpled. Taylor's voice broke. "Not because you were perfect, not because you didn't hurt me, but because I don't want to carry this anymore." William's tears fell freely. He whispered, "I forgive you too." Taylor's breath shook. "I didn't think you could." William laughed weakly through tears. "I didn't either." They sat in silence, and for once it wasn't the silence of punishment. It was the silence of two people learning how to exist in the same room again. A month later, Taylor and William sat in a counselor's office, not as husband and wife on paper, but as two people who refused to let grief be their final story. They spoke about Michael without screaming. They cried without blaming. They learned how trauma had stolen Taylor's memory and how silence had stolen William's voice. Emma watched them cautiously, hope trembling inside her like a candle. One afternoon, after a session, Taylor stood outside with William in the parking lot. The air was warmer now, early spring trying to exist. Taylor looked at William and said, "So what do we call each other now?" William blinked. "What do you mean?" Taylor smiled faintly. "We're divorced." William's mouth tightened, pain flickering. Then he exhaled. "I don't know," he admitted. Taylor's eyes softened. "I don't want to call you my ex like you're a mistake." William stared at her. Taylor continued, voice quiet. "You were my husband for 37 years. William's eyes shone. "And you were my home." Taylor swallowed. "Maybe we don't need a label yet." William nodded slowly. "Maybe we just keep choosing." Taylor took his hand, and this time she smiled. A small, fragile thing, but real. "You want pancakes?" she asked. William laughed. "Now you're talking." Taylor squeezed his hand. As they walked toward the car, Taylor glanced up at the sky. Bright, open, unpunishing. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel like life was only about what she'd lost. She felt, quietly, cautiously, like life might still hold something else. Not a replacement, not a denial, just another chapter. And somewhere deep inside, where her grief had lived like a locked room, Taylor imagined Michael smiling, not as a ghost, not as a wound, but as the son who had loved them enough to leave them a map out of the worst day. Moral of the story: sometimes, the hardest battles in life are fought within our own hearts. But in the end, love, forgiveness, and the courage to face grief together can transform the darkest days into a chance for renewal. True healing comes not from escaping pain, but from facing it together, choosing to forgive, and embracing life's next chapter, the end.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more real-life stories.